Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to Scotland once again, and we're going to return to a brewery that has now featured on the channel a good number of times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the last year or 18 months or so, and I would say that this brewery are particularly well known for their different session beers, lagers mainly, and some paleos, and they do very, very nice beers within those particular style brackets. But the beer that we're going to have a look at today is a special version of one they did that was a little bit different, and the original version of this beer was pretty damn awesome, I have to say. One of the best Scottish beers I've had in quite a little while, actually. So I have to say I'm very, very curious to see what this one has in store for us. So hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to Edinburgh, the Scottish capital. We're going to go to Leith, which is in the kind of northeastern part of the city to be precise, and we're going to have a look at another beer from Newbarns Brewery. So this particular beer is the barrel-aged version of plain dark beer. It comes in at 11% ABV. It's an Imperial Stout. And yeah, this one is aged in 4 different barrels and then it's blended together. But we will get to the specifics of that a little bit later on. But yeah, this beer was bought at the Salt Horse in Edinburgh by my good friend John of John Drinks. So a big thank you to him for getting this beer for me to review on the channel. So I will need to take him some big Swedish beers at some point actually. But yeah, Salt Horse is an awesome little kind of beer shop and bar that you'll find in the old town in Edinburgh. So I'd highly recommend that you go and check it out. But yeah, very cool that John got this one for me. He did get me another beer from Pilot as well, and you'll see me review that at some point in the fairly near future. But this is the one that I was very, very curious to try actually. So yeah, let's crack on then and see how we go. Always nice to review the new things from Newbarns, but I have got a very good feeling about this one. So yeah, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Newbarns Brewery before, and you will no doubt see more added to that list in the near future. I do have another beer from them back home in Scotland that you'll see me review soon, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Scottish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to whenever I get the opportunity, but quite often when I'm at home in the motherland of Scotland. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Newbarns Brewing once again then. So, Newbarns Brewing, as I've told you before, was founded back in 2020, and these guys are based in Leith in Edinburgh. So the 4 friends behind the brewery are Emma McIntosh, Gordon Mackenzie, Johnny Hamilton and Freddie Bjerkset. So Gordon and Emma are a couple, and they moved down to London from the east coast of Scotland back in 2012. Now they hadn't planned on becoming brewers, but Gordon soon started working at Siren in 2013 while Emma began working at Kernel in early 2014. But they met Freddie back in 2012, and he also was just about to begin working at Beavertown Brewery, where he was the sales account manager, and then Johnny as well also worked at Beavertown, and he was in charge of their Tempest project, which if memory serves me correctly was the big barrel aging project that they used to have. But Gordon later went on to work at the Kernel Brewery as well, and if you know the Kernel Brewery, you will know that they do some really nice kind of session beers, table beers and stuff like this as well. So when you try some of the Kernel stuff, you can really see where Newbarns are coming from actually. But in 2018, Gordon and Emma decided it was time to return to Scotland, and they'd always wanted to start up their own brewery, so they decided they were going to do it. But by the following year, Freddie and Johnny had joined them in Edinburgh, and it was time for them to get started on their new venture, which was Newbarns Brewery. But the branding is inspired by a bunch of old beer mats dating from between the 1940s and 1980s, and Emma's dad actually found these at an auction. But apparently they're going to focus on the more sessionable types of beer, such as lagers and pales, which they're doing already, and there will be the odd release of other things. I think so far I've tried Pilsners from them, I've tried the oat lager, I've had a few different pale ales, I've got a Vienna lager that I'm waiting to review, and of course there is the plain dark beer as well. But yeah, the session beers are where Newbarns Brewery really shine actually. But as of January 2022, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced about 20 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. And yeah, like I say, it is mainly session beers. But probably my favourite beer I've had from these guys so far would be the oat lager. The Pilsner was very good as well, but the plain dark beer is something that's a little bit different from them, and that is definitely worth checking out. That was one of the best Scottish beers I've had in quite some time, and it was just a really old school big Imperial Stout actually. So yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Newbarns Brewery for the moment. A hell of a pedigree when it comes to starting up a new brewery, so this is one of the Scottish breweries that you really need to check out at the moment if you haven't tried some of their beers already. But yeah, that is it for your history section of the video. So yeah, if you want to learn more about the brewery, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd or Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's crack on then and see how we get on with this beer. So when I was in the Salt Horse with John, I was a little bit confused by this because I just saw plain dark beer and I was like, why is that in a 330ml can? And if you've seen my review of the original, it's in a 440. And I believe the colour is a bit different from this as well, because this one obviously has a kind of goldy colour. I think the other one was a little bit more kind of silvery and black and stuff like that. But yeah, I was a bit confused when I saw this beer, and then I looked at it and I was like, oh, it's barrel aged. So yeah, I said to John, oh, I'm going to get one of those just before we leave, and then he actually went up and paid for everything and bought me this along with the other beer from Pilot, which was really cool of him actually. But yeah, so yeah, big thank you to John again for making this review possible, and I still owe him a few beers I think after that, but that was pretty cool. But yeah, 330ml can, this one. I actually can't remember how much this beer cost. I think it wasn't that much, maybe about £7 or £8. So if we assume 8, because that seems reasonable for a big 11% barrel aged Imperial Stout, £8 will work out somewhere in the region of like €9, somewhere in the region of 90 Swedish krona, then about 10 American dollars. So yeah, this beer was a little bit more pricey, but for what it is, it kind of makes sense. So yeah, to tell you a little bit about the beer itself then, I do have some details written down here about this one. So as we said, it's an 11% Imperial Stout. The original beer is hopped with noble hops, which will be from the likes of Germany and Czech Republic and things like that. There's a malt base of Golden Promise in there, and the beer is actually a blend of last year's batch of 2021's batch of the plain dark beer. So the version that they have here is aged in 4 different barrels before being blended together. So the first barrel is a 6-year-old Ben Riach Sherry Octave. The second one is a 24-year-old Macallan. The third one is a 19-year-old blended Speyside Sherry Cask Whisky. And then the final one is a 52-year-old Bonington Grain Whisky. So yeah, pretty interesting. But the beer was aged in all 4 of these barrels for about a year before it was blended together, as far as I understand. And if you do know better than that, please do correct me in the comments section below. I want the right information on this beer to be out there. But yeah, aged in 4 different barrels as we've listed there for about a year, and then blended together to make this one that they've released in the can. And the beer, the original beer itself, is from the 2021 batch actually. So yeah, this should be pretty damn cool actually. But yeah, 330ml can, this one. Let's get it out and we'll get on with the tasting then. The can feels pretty solid, so I'm just a bit wary of opening this up in case it explodes. But yeah, there we go. Okay, so let's get this guy out and into the glass then. Here we are. Oh, look at that. Just look how silky that thing is. Damn. That's impressive. Yeah, we'll sugar the last little bit of it up and get it out and into the glass. Give it a wee bit of an aggressive pour there just to get some head on it. But yeah, the original plain dark beer was a beautiful, beautiful beer. Just this really old school, robust Russian Imperial Stout, actually. Beautiful, beautiful beer. Right, before the head disappears on this one anyway. So you can see this beer, it poured with about 1/4 to 1/3 finger of a frothy, I would say dark kind of fawn coloured head there. That has just faded away to be a very, very thin foamy layer. and it's leaving a nice kind of ring around the edge of the glass there, but it's got a lovely little bit of a thin, wispy, foamy character just sitting on top of that. But yeah, that at 11%, you wouldn't expect the heads to hang around all that long, to be honest with you. But as you can see, this beer has poured a lovely, big, dark, ebony rosewood colour, and to be honest, from an Imperial Stout, you wouldn't expect anything less. Remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, the length of your wort boil is also going to play a role. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar is caramelised, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. Imperial Stouts like this, especially the more modern kind of craft beer Imperial Stouts, they tend to have quite long wort boils. I know Nerd Brewing, sometimes they leave their wort boiling overnight and things like that, and it gives you really highly caramelised sugars. But any barrel aging that you do, pardon me, and any adjuncts that you put into the beer can also affect the colour of the beer. But when it comes to an Imperial Stout, you know, adjuncts, there's very few adjuncts can affect the colour of an Imperial Stout. Only, you know, like, you know, beets and stuff like this. I've seen beets change the colour of an Imperial Stout once before, and that was kind of unusual. But yeah, the barrel aging isn't going to do all that much to the colour of the beer. But yeah, 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there. But I mean, overall, it does look pretty nice. And if we shine the light through it, it does have a wee bit of a kind of Coca-Cola, Pepsi Max coloured edge to it. But yeah, I really like that. And you can see just from the lacing that this thing is leaving on the glass, it is pretty boozy. It is pretty boozy and pretty, yeah, pretty impressive actually. So yeah, an absolute beast of a beer, this one, just from appearance. But nothing surprising about it in terms of its appearance when you consider what it actually is. But let's have a look at the aroma then and see how we get on. I hope this one is as good as the original. Oh yeah, that is an absolute monster. Absolute monster of a beer. Yeah. The first impression that I get of this one is it comes across as a lot more kind of silky than I remember the original one being. The original one was like, as I say, it was this big roasty toasty, but still very, very smooth Imperial Stout. This one, because of all the infused notes and things you've got in it, it does come across as a little bit smoother and more silky and stuff like this. But I tell you something, you're not going to come across many barrel aged blends that are similar to this one. I mean, what was it? A 6-year-old Ben Riach, a 24-year-old Macallan, 19-year-old Speyside Sherry cask, and then a 52-year-old Bonington. This thing is completely unique. Just unreal actually. So I'll be interested to see. I don't know if they're going to do editions of this beer every year. I guess they might actually. They might barrel age it and re-release it every year. But yeah, this one, the barrel age combination in this is pretty damn special actually. So yeah, let's just try and break this beer down for you and describe exactly what we're smelling, as we always do. So yeah, where to start with this? So backbone of this beer, you smell the nice smooth oaky wood in this one. That lovely oaky smooth character there is the backbone of this beer. Now you can smell the whiskey on top of that. If I was smelling this blind, I'm actually not sure. I would probably think this was bourbon barrel aged actually. But in fairness, it does have a wee bit of the kind of cognac type thing coming out of it as well. Now, the main difference, I guess, between Scotch barrel aging and American bourbon barrel aging, American bourbon barrel aging always gives you this really smooth and kind of vanilla-y oak, whereas the Scotch barrel aging quite often can be very powerful. You have to be very careful with Scotch barrel aging, actually, because if you don't do it just right, it can really just dominate the flavour of the beer and just unbalance it, actually. But cognac barrel aging is something that I really enjoy as well, actually. Cognac barrel aging can be very, very nice. But you can really smell some of those nice fruity cognac-y flavours and aromas coming out of this one as well. So yeah, but I suppose if it's too cognac, if it's sherry whiskies that have been aged in this, it would make sense actually that you're getting that, the cognac sort of sherry sort of thing. But yeah, the backbone of this beer is a lovely, smooth and slightly dry oaky character. You do get wee hints of vanilla out of it. There is a little hint of vanilla in there. You can smell a bit of a kind of light whiskey, kind of brown sugary in there. And again, for me, for those of you watching in the States, for me the main difference between Scotch whiskey and American bourbon, the American bourbons are always very sweet for me, whereas Scotch whiskey is a lot more kind of grainy, actually a little bit more spicy often, a lot of the time. But yeah, with this one, it almost, like the brown sugars that you get out of this from the barrel aging side of things really do smell a little bit more bourbon like, and you've got all that kind of dry fruity character just sitting on top of it as well. You know, the sultanas, the dried white green grapes, and then a little bit of a kind of raisiny, datey sort of character as well. So yeah, that's all just the base layer of the beer. The wood, the brown sugar, and then all these kind of dry fruity characters sitting on top of it. It's unreal, this is crazy. We've not even really talked about the actual malty side of the aroma here, but I would say the barrel aged side of this one does kind of dominate, and the malty side of the beer does take a bit of a back seat. This is one of these beers that really does make you think. It really does make you think. But on top of that, you do get a good little bit of chocolate out of this one. It smells a little bit, it's got a little bit of that kind of cocoa nib type dryness to it. So yeah, definitely a bit of a kind of smooth cocoa nibby chocolate to this one. And it's quite a low percentage cocoa actually. It's about 40 or 50% cocoa. So not quite sweet enough to be milky, but not, you know, dark enough to be, you know, like that really heavy sort of dark chocolatey sort of thing. There is a wee bit of brown sugar to this one. I do get a little bit of a kind of leathery, sweet caramel in this one. And as I say, Imperial stouts like this are going to have quite long wort boils, so that really makes your brown sugars really quite leathery and big. So there's a lot of that coming out in this one for me. When you take in the aroma of this beer quite deeply, you really do get quite a lot of that big leathery brown sugar actually. So yeah, this goes together very, very well. And for me, you don't get the big kind of roasty toasty characters out of this one that you got out of the original, so that's quite interesting too. So yeah, the barrel aged side of this beer really dominates the aroma, but then you still get a bit of the smooth chocolate and the kind of leathery brown sugars that you got from the original. But yeah, there's a few nutty and kind of undertones to the beer come out in this one as well. But yeah, the malty barrel aged side of this beer gets a big, big thumbs up from me. So on the hoppy side of things then, on the hoppy side of the beer, yeah, on the hoppy side of the beer, there's not a lot to report on this. I mean, when it's a barrel-aged beer, you have to remember the hops will have dropped out of this quite a little bit, and Imperial Stouts anyway are not the most hop-forward types of beer, but you do get a little bit of a kind of earthy character remaining in there. There's a wee bit of a kind of floral note as well, but that really is quite smooth and it takes a back seat, and there's a wee touch of grassiness in this beer as well. So yeah, I think this one, hoppy wise, there's not too much to report, but you can get the remnants of the original beer in this one. But on the fruity side of things, as we said earlier, you do get quite a little bit of fruity character from just the barrel aging. It's that dry sultana, datey sort of thing. But yeah, on the actual fruit from the hoppy side of the beer, you can smell there's some really quite intense kind of plummy notes to this one. It's got a big oily plummy character to it. There's a wee bit of a kind of juicy oily fig in there as well, and you've also got a wee bit of that sharper kind of blackberry sort of thing. So yeah, I really like how this goes together. Big sharp blackberry, smooth figgy character underneath, and a wee bit of a kind of big oily plum character too. So this beer really is very, very nice. The aroma of this one is quite different from the original, but a lot of that is down to the barrel aging. Of course, I can't speak in this video. But yeah, as I always say, take a little bit of time to ponder over the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But I think it is about time that we have a go at this one. So yeah, this one is the 2021 barrel-aged version of the plain dark beer. An Imperial Stout at 11% ABV, aged in 4 different whiskey barrels. So yeah, this should be pretty interesting. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers, and big thank you to John once again. Damn. That is pretty damn good. That really is good. That is pretty special. Now, I would go as far with this as saying this is one of the best Imperial Stouts that I've had from Scotland ever. I mean, the two breweries that are doing a lot of barrel aging just now, of course, it'd be Tempest, and I still need to try some of their barrel aged Imperial Stouts. I've actually not had many from them. And obviously, these guys are starting to play with the plain dark beer and barrel age that. But yeah, I would go as far as saying this is potentially one of my favourite Imperial Stouts that I've had from Scotland. The other one would be I forget the name of it, but the one from Dead End Brew Machine in Glasgow. That one with all the smoky malts and stuff in it was absolutely beautiful. This is a lovely, lovely Imperial Stout. So big thumbs up to Newbarns Brewery with this one. So I do hope that, you know, as I say, they've been experimenting a little bit with the bigger things. It'd be cool to see these guys do a Scotch ale. I think, you know, when they're a Scottish brewery, they really need to try like a big Scotch ale, like 160 shilling or something like this. But in terms of an old school barrel aged Imperial Stout, this is just spot on. This is a very, very good beer. If you see a can of this, might be, you know, £8 is a fair amount to lay out for a beer, but just go for it. You won't regret it with this. And the original one as well. Try the original, then try the bourbon, or the barrel. Why do I keep wanting to say bourbon barrel aged? Try the barrel aged version of this. This is a beautiful, beautiful beer. So I take my proverbial hat off to Newbarns for this. These guys, very welcome addition to the Scottish beer scene. So I hope we do see, as I say, I'd love to see a couple of Scotch ales from them. And a few more big beers, but their session beers are awesome as well. Like just another very good addition to the Scottish beer scene. The standard of Scottish craft beer has just gone up over the last couple of years quite exponentially. But yeah, this is awesome. So yeah, where do we start with this one then? First impression of it is that it is actually quite a bit drier in the flavour than I thought it was going to be from the aroma. And again, I think this is a kind of trait that you get with Scotch barrel aging in my experience. So yeah, let's focus on that, on the middle of your palate then. So the base layer of this beer is absolutely that sort of dry, woody, oaky woody character there. That forms the backbone of the beer. On top of that, you certainly get a little bit of that kind of roasty, toasty, well-fired, bread crusty sort of thing that you would associate with an old school Imperial Stout. And as I said to you, the original plain dark beer was a very kind of old school Russian Imperial Stout, the big, bitter, roasty, toasty one. So that's in this beer. So yeah, on the woody, let's focus on the middle third of your palate then. So in the middle third of your palate, you've got that nice dry kind of woody character in there. Toward the front of that middle third of your palate, you get a wee bit of you do get a little touch of vanilla in there, but I'd say that's kind of minimal. You get a little bit of nutty character as well, but sitting on top of that, you have that nice roasty, toasty, well-fired, bread crusty character in this one. So I think that the thing is as well, the further you go into the aftertaste with this beer, it really smoothens out and it becomes more and more silky. Actually, it really does get more and more silky the more that you drink of it. But yeah, I think it does work very, very nicely. Actually, I really, very, very positive thoughts about this beer. But yeah, so yeah, on top of the woody character of this one, the whiskey side of things starts to come out a little bit more the further you go into the aftertaste. So I don't think it's there initially, but yeah, the smooth, the sort of woody character you get there with the vanilla and the kind of nutty notes, you do feel the kind of the whiskey side of the beer just sitting on top of that the further you go into the aftertaste. But in the early part of the taste, you get that really roasty, toasty, well-fired, bread crusty note. On top of that, you can feel there is like a kind of slightly dense layer of a very kind of thick and grainy brown bready character. Then on top of that, you can feel the leathery brown sugars from the malt base in this one. You get that big leathery brown sugary character out of this beer. So yeah, I think that does go together really, really nicely in this one. And the brown sugar, the big leathery brown sugars, they kind of sit there into the aftertaste as well. So on top of the bready layer, you've got this kind of big circle in the middle of your palate, and you can feel that big, leathery, highly caramelised brown sugar. I don't know if I'd go quite as far as saying that it's treacle. It's not quite as dark in flavour as treacle is, but if you go to the dead centre of your palate, you might find a wee bit of a sweet caramel there. And I mean, when this beer is 11% ABV, when this beer is 11% ABV, I think it's going to give you quite a bit of that actually. So yeah, this is really this is an awesome beer, this one. It's very kind of straight shooting in a lot of ways, but it really does the job. And the barrel aged side of this one's quite interesting as well. It's quite different from other barrel aged beers I've had in recent times, because these sort of infused flavours take a little bit of time to come out, and they actually come out more in the aftertaste than they do in the beginning. So I like that. I certainly do like that about this beer. So, yeah, I think that covers. I think that's everything we need to say about the middle third of the palate then, other than about the sort of aftertaste of it. So you can feel the whiskey character you get out of this one is actually a little bit spicy, I find. But at the same time, you can kind of tell it's a Speyside because it's quite bright and it's got that slightly citrusy element to it as well. But the sort of fruity notes I was picking up from the barrel aging and the aroma, they don't show up so much in the actual flavour. So that's quite interesting too. But anyway, on the back third of the palate then, let's focus on that. Border region between middle third and back third of your palate. Again, you get a little bit of a kind of bready build up there, a wee bit of bread crust. So yeah, I do like how that goes together as well. But the base of that back third of your palate, you can feel that the woody backbone of the beer does get a little bit drier around then. You can really feel that the back third of your palate in this beer is a little bit drier and more bitter in a sense. But then on top of that, you can feel there is a bit more of that well-fired bread crusty character. The bready layer, I think, is a little bit thicker, and then on top of that, you can get some of the yeasty notes. And for me, the yeasty note is this really dense, toasty, really well-fired bread crusty sort of thing. You can feel that just sitting on top of the back third of the palate. So yeah, I really like how that side of things goes together for sure. But yeah, as I say, this beer, again, I like this one because it kind of shows you the original sort of straight shooting nature of the plain dark beer, but it just has a wee bit more about it. You know, it's the aftertaste that's different. I think in the beginning, the flavour of the beer is quite similar, but the aftertaste is a little bit different. So you get a slightly more dry aftertaste. You can feel that brightness and spiciness almost of the Speyside whiskies, and a little bit of the citrusy character as well, and you get the nice dried fruity notes from the kind of sherry qualities too. So the further you go into the aftertaste with it, you can sort of feel the woody flavours just pushing their way to the top, and then you get that slightly citrusy Speyside whiskey sort of thing, the smoothness in there as well, and a wee bit of the kind of sultana dried fruity flavour there. But yeah, I think that covers the malty and yeasty side of the beer. Let's focus on the hoppy and fruity side of things. Back corners of the palate, there's definitely a wee bit of an earthiness there, and it's quite a powerful earthiness, but as you move further forward, it gets a little bit herbal, and as you push further forward towards the kind of front corners of the palate there, it's a little bit more kind of floral and aromatic. So yeah, you get that nice kind of floral aromaticity towards the kind of front corners of your palate there. But again, remember, these are not big hoppy beers. But yeah, around the front curve of the palate, it's a little bit lighter and more kind of grassy. But yeah, the hoppy side of this beer, there's not a lot of IBU in this beer. It's coming from the hoppy side of things. Let's just say that. And remember, the longer you keep this beer, the more the hoppy side of the beer the hoppy bitterness is going to drop out. But let's focus on the front third of your palate and the things that are going on there. So border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again you get a little bit of a kind of bready build up there, a wee bit of bread crust. Then the base of that front third of your palate is a more kind of smooth, it is a little bit of a more kind of smooth, wood. You can feel the smooth oaky woody note under there, but there is a wee bit of a more brown bready, rye bready type bread crust there, and on top of that you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. But it does get quite dry the further into the aftertaste you go, that base layer. But let's focus on the fruity side of things. So yeah, on the fruity side of things then, you've got a little bit of a kind of raisiny, you do have a little bit of a kind of raisiny sharpness on top of that. So the top there is a bit of raisin, a bit of a raisiny character. Underneath that there is a wee bit of a kind of plummy note, but then the base of the back third of your palate, the base of the back third of your palate is it really actually gets quite dry. The fruity character on this is a bit difficult to pick out, to be honest with you, because you are getting a wee bit of that really dry, you are getting a little bit of that dry kind of cognac-y sort of thing. I keep saying cognac, it's sherry, it's not cognac, sorry, but it does have, it's quite similar. So yeah, on the back half of that front third of your palate, you get a bit of that, you get that datey, pruny kind of thing. You get that nice datey, pruny sort of thing. On top of that, there's a wee bit of a straight up kind of raisin and then a bit of plum underneath. But yeah, datey, pruny characters there. And as you move further forward, you've got that nice oily fig kind of forming the base of the beer. But then as you move towards the very kind of front tip of the tongue, it gets a little bit more kind of blackberry-like. So yeah, I really like how this one goes together from that perspective. So yeah, the fruity side of this beer is quite interesting. It's quite an oily fruity character you get out of it, but there is a wee bit of dryness underneath there, which is good. So yeah, this is a really interesting one for me actually. I really like how this goes together. Yeah, big thumbs up from me for this Newbarns beer. It shows you the original one, but it's the aftertaste that really sticks out to me with this one as being a little bit different. The alcohol's going a wee bit to my head just now because this is a big 11% beast, but it's a beautiful, beautiful beer. I think we can leave it at that. I do like the way the oiliness of the fruity character comes out, and it shows you the nice kind of dry, woody characters as well. But yeah, this one for me goes together really, really nicely. So big thumbs up to Newbarns once again. Let's round off this review with a quick look at the mouthfeel. So yeah, on the mouthfeel side of things, this is a pretty full-bodied beer. I'd say it's in the midpoint of the full-bodied category. Its carbonation is very, very smooth. The beer overall is pretty slick actually. It's a very, very slick and very smooth beer overall. In terms of IBUs, it's a bit difficult to say, but I would say this one, it gives the impression of being towards the top of the IBU scale, but quite a lot of that is coming from the grainy side of the beer, the barrel aging, the kind of roasty, toasty grains and stuff like that. Not so much of it from the hops maybe, but I think this is quite a high bitterness beer, but how much of that you can count as IBU, I'm not 100% sure, because some of it does come from the malt, but yeah, this is at least, an 80, 90 IBU beer, something like that. It's pushing towards the top end of the scale. The malty side of the beer is lovely and smooth, but a bit of dryness in there, a bit of big leathery smoothness as well from the brown sugars, but the fruity side of it is really nice and oily. And as I said, this beer really generates quite a kind of dry flavour the further that you go into the aftertaste too from the barrel aged side of things, but you get that nice big kind of dry fruity character out of it. But yeah, beautiful, beautiful beer from Newbarns, and definitely up to scratch with their very high standards. So yeah, it gets a big thumbs up from me. I'm curious to see whether they're going to do more editions of this over the years, but yeah, the 2021 edition of the barrel aged plain dark beer has proved to be very, very nice, and a very unique blend of barrels as well, as we've said earlier. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this review. A bit longer, but some beers I think do take a bit of time to open up, and for the drinker to get their head around as well, actually. But yeah, I think we can round off this review there with that one. So yeah, this one is the 2021 edition of the barrel aged plain dark beer from Newbarns Brewery in Leith in Edinburgh. Lovely, lovely beer, and I highly recommend you check it out. So thank you again for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Newbarns Brewery. Check out my social media, check out their social media, and I will see you guys in the next review. Till the next time, slàinte, skål, cheers. See you guys very soon, and thank you again to John of John Drinks for this beer. Make sure you check out his channel. Slàinte just now.